as you are the current vice chair of the Canada-China Legislative Association, how have relations between Canada and China changed since the pandemic arose? Have there been any issues regarding trade, tourism, or political views?
That's another great question. I believe that our our approach with China has remained. However, there's been a focus certainly on how we are working together to conquer COVID-19. So in the early days of the pandemic, for example, there was work that we had done to help facilitate through the Canadian Red Cross, working together with the Red Cross Society of China to deliver PPE based on the call from the World Health Organization, WHO. And to be quite frank, at this point, I believe that world governments, world leaders are very much focused on ensuring that their country is safe, on ensuring that their people are safe, and that's certainly no different than what we're doing here in Canada in terms of our parliamentary work. It has shifted entirely to our COVID-19 response. So we're seeing that happen around the world. Of course, we need to work together in order to get through this crisis. Uh, this is this is a situation that has shown us that when it comes to public health, uh, there are no borders. What happens in any one place in the world will ultimately affect every single person on the planet when we're talking about outbreaks and epidemics and pandemics. So it's critical that we remain focused on that. And of course, our focus as well as a government is on Canada's recovery, not just health-wise, but also our social economic recovery. So the measures that we have put in place are very much focused on ensuring that we stay strong as a country, that our businesses are strong, that our workers who are losing employment are taken care of, that vulnerable populations like seniors have additional support, and students as well. Students who we know rely on summer employment in order to put money into the bank and pay for the fall tuition. That's going to be very challenging this summer for a lot of students. So some students have opted to take additional courses during the summer terms if they're available, but others are looking for a job, and if they can't find one, then they will be able to access our emergency student benefit, which gives them $12.50 a month. That's $1,250 a month, and we're doing all these measures to ensure that Canada remains strong through this crisis. And of course, we will continue to look out for Canada's interests when we engage with our global partners. But for the time being, it's about getting through COVID-19.
Mm.
Yeah, and for
And
a global pandemic, it's going to take the entire world to come together to solve the problem.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
definitely. And our next question is something that you also mentioned. So this pandemic has caused a rise in discrimination against East Asians and specifically Chinese individuals. And what has the government done so far to protect communities facing discrimination?
Great question. So I've talked about some of the effects of the pandemic on particularly East Asian communities, and our government has been quite vocal on this. In fact, the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau came to the riding Scarborough North just a couple months ago. It was in fact for the Lunar New Year. So when he came, I believe the crisis was hitting China quite hard, and we were beginning to see those racist and xenophobic reactions towards Canadians of Chinese descent here in our communities. And the Prime Minister was unequivocal. He was absolutely clear in denouncing that and to talk about the importance that we remain strong in our values as Canadians, our diversity, our multiculturalism, our inclusion, and that is what I very much appreciated that message from our Prime Minister. when he's writing. And we need to continue to stand up. We need to continue to be a voice and it doesn't matter if we are of Chinese descent or of Asian descent or not. All of us as Canadians need to reject that because, as we all know, racism, xenophobia, discrimination has no boundaries. It does not pick and choose. It will work against one group on one day and work against another group the next. And the best way for us to stop it is for all of us to stand together and to denounce it, to call it out for what it is, and to be absolutely clear that it is unacceptable. So we will continue to do that. Our government also has an anti-racism strategy across the country, and we've been able to invest in communities, in organizations that do anti-racism work. So that is very important. Recognizing that racism and discrimination are systemic. They are deeply entrenched within institutions. The nature of racism has changed over time. It's no longer the civil rights era where we saw very blatant acts consistently of racism. Now it is institutionalized, and because of COVID and because of the outbreak in Wuhan, we have seen now more blatant, more obvious forms of racism. And we don't want to go back in the past. We certainly do not want to go back to a time where people feel it is acceptable and okay to say racist things, or worse, to be violent against others in a discriminatory fashion. It is completely unacceptable, and that is why when one of our parliamentarians and a party leadership candidate questioned the loyalty of our public health leader in Canada, who happens to be of Asian descent. It was very disappointing, and I was very happy to see that MPs from all parties stood up and denounced those comments as unacceptable. Dr. Theresa Tam is a professional, one with tremendous experience, and should deserve the respect that is given to our top public health official of the country.